Hi, I'm Bob Canote, and on this episode of the Camp Chaos Chronicles, I'm going to present the first of a series of 2 videos where we finish up the story of the Monterey E-Type. Better late than never. Dang it. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, I will refer you to the link in the description, which takes you back to Season 2, where I presented the story of the Monterey E-Type. This was a Jaguar E-Type that I built for a client for the Monterey Motorsport Reunion in 2011. And the focus that year was on the 50th anniversary of the E-Type. It was an interesting job. It took me to the next level, definitely, because in fact, this was the first race car prep job I had actually done for money. And it was a trial, and it was difficult. And one of the reasons I'm doing this video series is so that years ahead I can look back and say, you know what? That's when I really stepped up to the plate and made the decision to go to the next level. I got to say that it was like the high school football captain graduating, and the next time that he plays a game is the Super Bowl, because that's kind of what Monterey is. So it makes a good story. Now, at this point, I would ask you to cut me a little bit of slack regarding the quality of some of these videos and pictures. The point of me taking these pictures and videos was not to produce some sort of a cinematic wonder. The whole point was to record details of these cars and events in order to use them for reference later, not to do what I'm doing now with them. So be kind. Now, the E-Type was actually only about half the story, because there was another car that was being prepared by Johnny Rice and Eric Skoglund and Alan Peterson that was also going to Monterey, and it was a 1957, I believe, Devin SS. Now, the Devin SS was a car that was kind of a kit car back in the day, that you could put any engine, transmission, chassis underneath it that you wanted to. And I think initially it was intended for the small block Chevrolet and a 56, 57 Chevrolet chassis, that sort of thing. But ultimately it ended up with XK120 or 140 driveline under it. And it had a 3.4 liter engine, and originally that had been upgraded to a 3.8 by Terry Tuff Engines and Bill Terry. So that car was being prepared as well. You know, we were coming right down to the wire with both cars. And but eventually we got to the point where we could put them both on the trailer. Now, the thing with the E-Type was that it just wasn't ready to be a race car yet. And it was decided that it was going to be displayed as an old race car, which kind of disappointed me, but that's the way we approached it the last week or so, because it was kind of me doing the job, except that Alan Peterson was doing some of the electrical work. In fact, all of the electrical work as well. So when it went on the trailer, it was going to be a static display. But then somewhere between Spring Lake Park, Minnesota, and Monterey, the decision was made that we were going to actually race the car, which would have been great information to know before the car went on the trailer. That clutch is so touchy. Now, as far as me getting out to Monterey was concerned, I decided that what I was going to do is, being that I really needed to decompress a little bit after this project and take a bit of a road trip, I decided I was going to rent a car and take the most direct route possible out to Monterey, because after all, it's a 4,000-mile commute to work and back. But having given it some consideration, I thought, you know what, this is kind of a vintage car thing that we're doing. Wouldn't it be great if I took my 1978 Jaguar XJ6 and drove that out there and back? That'd be kind of fun. So what I did is I put a big box of spare parts that could possibly go wrong and leave me stranded out in the middle of nowhere, and changed the oil, changed the coolant, and headed out for Monterey with a heart full of hope. Now, I can't tell you the exact route that I took, but I do know that I went through Nebraska and some parts of Colorado. And the fact is, the further west I got, it went from merely being desolate to what I would call complete desolation, which really kind of has a beauty all its own. But, you know, after a day and a half driving through there, can get a little tedious. And the other thing that became a factor was the overheating issue that began to rear its ugly head as I got closer and closer to northern Nevada. Now, part of that problem was due to the fact that the car tended to run a little bit warm on hot days anyway, but the really big factor was the temperature when I got to northern Nevada was 109 degrees, and eventually at Elko 112 degrees. So that temperature gauge was riding pretty high, and I was concerned, but eventually it did cool off when I got to Northern California, and it was not an issue from that point on. Eventually I got to Laguna Seca, and it was really kind of a special time for me driving up that hill onto the track. This is a track that I've heard about and wondered about all my life, the famous corkscrew. A lot of special people have raced at that track. In fact, anybody that's anybody has raced at Laguna Seca. And so I got there and I set up my camp, and then I started to hear cars go around. Now, the thing about the historics is that everybody has to take several laps behind a pace car, so everybody at the very least knows the lay of the land, knows where the track goes. And so what I did is I found the nearest vantage point looking over the track, and the first car that I saw was, guess what? The E-Type. So I was pretty excited. I hustled on over to the pits, which, you know, I didn't know my way around this place, so it took me a while to figure that out. But there it was. It looked just like a race car. It had the number circles and the numbers on it, had the seat belts in it, which it didn't have when we left, and that was pretty much where the similarity stopped, because there was a ton of work to do. The car needed an alignment real badly. It hadn't been done since I did a rough thread account on the tie rods back in Minnesota before putting it on the trailer. So took out a tape measure and did the best we could in that regard, there not being an alignment rack on the premises that we could see. And also the tires were 10-year-old Dunlop racing tires, which had lost any elasticity a long time ago, and they just really needed to be replaced, hard as rocks. An interesting story about those tires. We decided we were going to replace them. So Eric Skoglund and I each grabbed a couple of tires, put them under our arms, and we're hustling over to the Goodyear tent. It's quite a ways. It's down the row and then up the perimeter fence to, it's got to be almost a quarter of a mile to where we can mount new tires. So I can see it from here, though. You know, there's the Goodyear banner right up there. It's getting close, so, you know, my shoulders are barking at this point, and I go around the corner, and there's a cluster of people right in the middle of the road, right in my way. But right over there, between a tent pole and this crowd, there's a gap. I can shoot that gap. And right as I get there, some hunyuk in blue denim backs up into the gap. So I kind of give him a little shoulder, say, excuse me, let him know that people are actually trying to get stuff done here. And he said, excuse me, and I made it over to the Goodyear tent, and Eric's waiting there. And he's kind of smiling, and he said, guess who you just met? And I turned around, and that hunyuk in blue denim was Jay Leno. So Jay and I, we're like that. So I got to looking around our environment here, and directly across the lane from us was Donovan Motorsports, run by Brian Donovan. And as you can see in this picture here, those 3 silver, red, and green E-types, some of the fastest, if not the fastest E-types in the country. And there's 3 of them. So in addition to racing those cars, he's got a pretty extensive restoration and maintenance facility, I think in Connecticut. But yeah, he was very, very nice. He came over and looked our project over and was very, very complimentary of what we had done. I went over to his place, spent some time there seeing how it's done. Pretty impressive operation. Having touched base with the team and understood basically what the schedule was going to be for the next few days, I then decided to get out and look around. And not only were the E-types there from all over the country for the 50th anniversary reunion of the E-type, but also the Group 44 car was there, along with their GTP prototypes. And that was pretty amazing. I now had an opportunity, being that I have actually built an XJS track car at that point, just pretty much got it done just prior to leaving for Monterey. I had an opportunity to look the cars over, got underneath the car and waved the camera around a little bit just to, you know, see what the suspension mods were and so forth. And oddly enough, some of them were the same. Great minds think alike. But it was wonderful to actually get a look close up and personal at some of these vehicles that I've only heard about over the years, and it was a pretty special time. Well, at this point, the pits are set up. All 3 cars have been through tech. Now, when I say 3 cars, there was also what I believe was a 1962 Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase that had been brought along as well. So we had a 3-car team, and everything was looking good. So this would be a good point to bring this episode to a close, because next time the racing starts. And there's a lot of information and a good story to present there. So if you like these videos, like, subscribe, and maybe leave a comment down below so that we can know what we can do to do what we do better. So we'll see you the next time on the Camp Chaos Chronicles.